Happy National Lupus Awareness Month, guys. Um, Trying to move that a bit closer. I first got diagnosed with lupus Mother's Day of 2022. So I got a phone call from my PCP. It was like, hey, something came back in your blood work and you're going to have to come back and see us. And now what she did was she only told me about the Sjogrens. So she said, hey, you were diagnosed, or we're diagnosing you with Sjogren syndrome. You tested positive for Sjogren syndrome. And what it is it's, a little dry eyes, dry mouth. Have you noticed any of that? And I was like, oh, yeah, that's so funny that you mentioned that because, like a month ago, I was like, something is off. Like my mouth is getting so dry that I wanted to see a dentist, because I was like, I don't have any saliva. I'm going to lose all of my teeth. Like, this is getting really bad. And she's like, yeah, so that's what that is. You'll come back in to see us maybe like in a week and we'll, go over it with you. And I was like, oh, okay. And I didn't really have like big symptoms to where like, oh, this is something, that we need to look into. So I had moved out of my home state ahead of my parents, a year ahead. In I got here May of 2021, the beginning of May. And I was already a single mom, so I was used to being a single mom. But now I was living by myself, working and trying to find daycare for my daughter. And, so all I was doing was eating, sleeping, working, rinse and repeat, and I didn't have good like eating habits. I didn't start dieting, changing my diet and anything like that. But by June, my daughter had some health issues that needed to get sorted and she was in the hospital. And so one of the visits that we she had to start seeing doctors. One of the visits we had done, she was too young to stand on the scale. And they were like, okay, mom, stand on the scale and like, we'll, subtract her weight from your weight. And I'm like, okay. And then I was the heaviest I had ever been when I got here. I was 206 pounds. And so they were like, oh, okay, mom, step on the scale. Okay, grab the baby, step on the scale. And then subtract, and they're like, okay, thanks. And I was like, by chance, how much do I weigh? Because it's not in pounds. And she had told me I was like 10 or 15 pounds less than what I was when I got here. And I was like, oh. I was like, that's crazy. I lost weight. I wasn't doing anything. And she's like, oh, well, that's good. Like, good for you, girl. She's like, I wish it could be that easy for me. And we like laughed, whatever. And I was like, oh, okay. And I ended up eventually like thinking, okay, that couldn't have been right. I'm going to weigh myself on my own scale. And when I weighed myself on my own scale, it was around like I had lost 15 to 17 pounds like at that time. And I was like, well, this is crazy. Cool. And the same, like everyone was always like, oh, well, the first year that people move here because it's so hot, everybody drops 10 pounds. Like everybody in the summer, everybody drops 10 pounds. I had been here for a month. And I was like, okay, well, cool. So that solved that. Like everybody moves here and they drop 10 pounds because it's so hot. That solved that. Cool. That happened to me. The dry eyes, I would just put a paper towel over with water and rub, and I was like, oh, I have really oily skin, especially in the summer, and the oil must just be seeping into my eyes, and that's what's going on with that. Boom, that solved that. And the only thing was the dry mouth. And so by the time my parents had got here, I was like, the dry mouth is so bad that I was like crying in the car because I was like, I'm going to lose all my teeth. And so besides that, I didn't really have anything too major. I did notice that I had lost like 20 pounds without doing anything. And I wasn't changing my eating habits. I was eating out a lot, like, couldn't go to the grocery store because my daughter would like scream and cry. And I was Instacarting, DoorDashing all my groceries. So it was like literally I would leave the house to go to work, take her to daycare, pick her up from daycare, come home. There was no really activity, and we would like go to the park sometimes, but it was really hot, so we couldn't like really be out. Other than that, like there was really no activity happening or changes in diet. Like it's just hot, and apparently you just lose 10 pounds. So then as time progressed, I was like, oh, I'm noticing I'm having a harder time breathing. I'm like having a harder time. I'm having to take my inhaler more. I'm like, okay, I have exercise induced asthma. Well, maybe it's not exercise induced. Maybe it's just asthma. So I have to like have my inhaler, and I'm taking the albuterol inhaler. I mean, you're only supposed to take twice. I was taking like 4 or 5 times, like in the run of an hour. And I'm like, something is going on. And so I end up feeling like I'm going to have an asthma attack, and I go to the ER. And the ER is like, yeah, you had an asthma attack. You know, that's normal. That's what's going on. And I was like, oh, okay. And they just kind of sent me home. And I had noticed like my heart rate was like dropping. It was like steadily like dropping and kind of coming up and then dropping. And I was like, yeah, that was happening. And they're like, yeah, it's an asthma attack. And I'm like, okay. And so I keep having these issues with my breathing and just kind of feeling a bit worn down. I'm like, man, my asthma is really getting ahead of me. So now I'm going to get a PCP. And I ended up noticing that I had this thing that would pop up on my finger every now and then. Right here, it was like a little rash, but it was like a semicircular kind of like not really circular shape, and it would raise up and it would get kind of like inflamed, and it eventually got red around the edges and scabby, and then like it cracked and it was itchy, and I was like, well, I have eczema. But then it like got white. And I was like, maybe I'm ashy. So I put lotion on my hands. No, it didn't help. It was just like a white casting over it. And I was like, this is weird. And eventually I was like, this is not going away. I'm going to go to urgent care and see if they can check it out. Went to urgent care. And at that point, he was like, oh yeah, well, you have eczema. It could be that. We can prescribe you a cream, because when I'm telling you, like all my creams like that I have for my eczema and stuff, they had gotten expired, and I didn't have new PCP or anything. So I just didn't use them. And I was like, okay, well, it's fine, because my eczema really wasn't bothering me too much. It'll pop up every now and then. But I was like, that's what it is. And so he's like, yeah, we'll prescribe you a new cream. And then he goes, but you need to get a PCP. And the reason why is because that looks like something, there's a disease, an autoimmune disease that attacks the skin. And he was like, I can't for the life of me remember the name, but it looks like that with that white, like casting over it. And he was like, and it's an autoimmune disease. He's like, you need to get a PCP. I'm going to give you a list. I was like, okay. And he gives me that list. And of course, I didn't get a PCP right away. I waited, and I was like, well, whatever. And I put the cream on it, and the triamcinolone cream that I used for my eczema was not working. It was not helping. And I was like, this thing is not going away. Like, I don't know what it is, but it's not going away. And so I ended up having another asthma attack or like episode, whatever, and I was just like, this is not normal for me. And I was calling into work, and I was like, you know what, you guys, I have, I'm following up with a PCP, and we're gonna see what's going on, because I was like, this is not normal for me. And so I see the PCP, she does a wellness check and everything, and then I go, hey, by the way, I saw someone at urgent care, and he said that this looks like an autoimmune disease that can attack the skin, and I don't know, is there anything that you can like look at for that or do? And she goes, yeah, we'll run blood work. I was like, is that easy? And I was shocked, because I was like, I've had doctors in the past who things are not that easy, they don't really listen to you. And I was like, oh, okay. But I was like, cool. So she's like, yeah, we'll do blood work, take labs, and then we'll follow up. And I'm thinking, cool, but it's probably just my eczema, and I need a stronger cream. So in the meantime, she prescribed something a little bit stronger. And I'm like, nothing is going to pop up on the test. I don't have anything, remotely, like showing or remotely similar to anything like autoimmune disease. Like, I knew of lupus, that was a big one. I don't have lupus. Like, I don't have the butterfly rash, nothing. So later, the test comes back, and that's when she calls, and it's like, stuff came up. And she tells me about the Sjogren's. I'm like, okay. I have my follow-up appointment, and she goes, yeah, so she tested positive for Sjogren's. You were SSA and SSB positive, and you were ANA positive. You tested positive for lupus. And I was like, what? Now, being ANA positive does not mean that you have lupus. It doesn't mean that you have lupus. But she's like, ANA typically goes ahead with lupus. So at this time, we're saying the perspective, you have lupus. I'm like, okay. And then she's like charting and whatever. She's like, yeah. And she's like, I think that was everything. And then it's like, oh, no, wait, something else. She's like, yeah, you also tested positive for rheumatoid arthritis. You have rheumatoid arthritis. What? And so I was like, okay, well, the lupus diagnosis was the one that did it for me, because I was like, lupus is not good. Like, you hear of lupus, and then you hear people like having to get kidneys replaced, and I'm like, what is And so I was kind of like, okay. But she assured me, like, it's not, that's not everybody's case. It's not, that's not the end all be all. It's not, you have lupus and then your kidneys fail. She said, that's not, like, don't worry about it. We're going to have you see a rheumatologist, and the rheumatologist will follow up with you from there. And so it takes a couple months for me to see the rheumatologist. And at this point, I'm at a new job. Because I was in finance and banking, and I had taken a break from that. I went back to banking, and I didn't tell anybody. They have a thing where you can do like the ADA paperwork for, I have a disability and etc. I didn't tell anyone, because I was like, nothing is going on. Like, I just have dry eyes, dry mouth. Okay. That was a mistake, because between my diagnosis and then me needing to see the rheumatologist, it was in August. I had, like, every 2 weeks something new was going wrong, which I can kind of get into the full journey in a different video, but it was just insane. And by the time I saw the rheumatologist, they do their blood work, because they have to do new blood work. They see what the doctor gets, but they do new stuff. And she's like, yeah, so you have RA and you have Sjogren's. Sjogren's is not normally a primary autoimmune disease. It usually is accompanied by something else, and it usually is accompanied or comes accompanied with lupus. However, your lupus markers and your blood work are not showing up. She's like, but you have lupus symptoms, so we're treating you like a lupus patient. We're saying you have lupus. And she was like, what happens is, it's rare to have RA and lupus at the same time, and when that happens, one of them shows more than the other one. So either the lupus will be at the forefront and you have the RA symptoms and that's masked, or the RA is at the forefront and you have lupus and it's masked in your blood work. And so she was like, you have lupus, you have RA, you have Sjogren's. And I'm like, okay, cool, great, we got that. What do we do? We're gonna figure out some medications. You're gonna come and see us. They explained the whole thing, and she's like, we're gonna go from there, and we'll keep an eye on your blood work. We're gonna pull your blood work every so often, keep an eye on that. And she was saying that one of the things that they noticed, though, was that my markers were they were high for my Sjogren's. The RA was like higher, like it was noticeable, but the Sjogren's was high. And I was like, that makes sense, because the dry mouth was out of this world. I don't know how to explain it. And so they were like, we're going to try to get a good control of it and all of that. And from there, after seeing the rheumatologist, started a whole host of symptoms and ambulance visits and stuff that I can get into in another video. But they let me know too that my trajectory, like the activity, the autoimmune activity the trajectory at which it was going, how quickly things like were going downhill, was not normal, and it wasn't a normal, what did they call it, like disease progression. And other people who were diagnosed with this stuff, and they were like, and you're young, so they were like, do you have a family history, anything you can think of where somebody in your family had this stuff? Nobody in my family has any of this stuff. It's not like my mom had it and I got it. There's not a path that follows. And so we're like trying to figure it out, what could it be? And the only thing we could think of is, I was like, well, wait a minute, my unit in the military had asbestos. And my PCP is like, wait a minute. And my rheumatologist is like, wait a minute. And I was like, can there be a connection to all this stuff? And they were like, yeah, environmental factors can trigger autoimmune activity. Even if you didn't have it, environmental factors can play a part in, now all of a sudden your body's attacking itself and something is going wrong. So we've concluded that, and that can be why my disease activity is so, like, when I tell you abnormal, like, it's different. It's out. It's crazy. We're contributing that to why, and I'm trying to get the VA to compensate me, but because I was a reservist, it's very difficult. But yeah, so that is a synopsis of my journey, and I'll probably make more videos throughout the month of May for lupus awareness, but also talk about like my RA and my Sjogren's. But yeah, so also advocate for yourself and your health. There are going to be professionals who do not believe you, and who are going to throw medication at you if you feel like something is wrong or something is incorrect, like a diagnosis or something, or you're like, hey, I'm not vibing with that. Speak up, advocate for yourself, do research, find a care team who will listen to you, and do every avenue possible to make sure that you are okay, because you're the only person who knows your body and who's going to advocate for you. So please make sure you do that. Thank you.